What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflight video talking about Shadowpriest again. We did a plus 15 Nokhud offensive. I've been pumping some bigger keys with some of the guys in my guild and having a really good time on the priest. You can see what did we do here. We did a Nokhud 15, then we did a Shadow Moon 15, then we did an Alcathar 16. So just getting some bigger keys in on the main character, getting my rating, Raider.io rating up there. I'm really excited. I'm almost at 1900 here. So yeah, this is it's been a lot of fun, and I've been experimenting with the Deathspeaker build still. If you guys are wondering about my gear, I'm at about 392 here, and I do have my 2-piece. I don't have 4-piece yet. I have my 3rd tier set in the bags, but I have not been able to get a 4-piece yet complete, so I'm still waiting on that. Getting that extra 4% haste would actually be amazing at this point in the expansion, because I'm kind of stuck at, you know, this 20% mark right now, but we'll get there. But yeah, let's talk about this plus 15 Nokhud offensive that I did on the Shadowpriest. There's a couple of important, like, moments that I want to talk to you about. And I'll mention the build, first of all. It is the Deathspeaker No Idle build. That's what I'm running, and I am running with Mind Melt. So I've run this before. You basically don't ever press Mind Flay as your single target filler anymore. You're not pressing this button at all. You're pressing Mind Spike as a filler because it'll give you this buff, which gives Mind Blast a 50% increased cast time and then 25% more crit. And of course, that buff stacks. So you can stack it twice. So it basically means that your Mind Blast can be have a much higher chance to crit. So you can see it here. I'll just go Mind Spike, and then boom, you can see I have 2 stacks. Your next Mind Blast will be instant cast and have 50% crit. So boom, I hit it there and it actually did crit. So this is kind of a huge part of the build, and you end up using Mind Spike as your filler spell all the time. Oop, I just knocked something over. You end up using Mind Spike as your filler instead of Mind Flay. You're basically never channeling any spells anymore. This is just the instant cast. Not instant cast all the time, but you will get instant cast Mind Spikes from Surge of Darkness, but this is more of a casting build and no channeling whatsoever. Now, you still want to take Mental Decay, because you will be channeling Mind Seer. That's for your AoE damage, you're going to be channeling lots of Mind Seers, as you normally do, and Mental Decay will help to keep your dots ticking while you're channeling Mind Seer, which is really important. But the crux of this build is all about Dark Ascension plus Mindbender. And of course, you're getting the resets on Shadow or Death with Deathspeaker, and you're cleaving all of this damage with your Psychic Link and with your Inescapable Torment. So you always pop your 2 1-minute cooldowns, your Dark Ascension and your Mindbender. You pop those together, and then you Mind Blast, Shadow or Death, Mind Blast, as many as you can fit in there to trigger Inescapable Torment damage, and that's all going to be cleaving with Psychic Link as well. So that's how the build works. Let me jump into the footage. I've talked about the build multiple times before, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, and we will just get to the actual video here. Oops, let's get back on camera. Oh, there we go. So yeah, there's lots of let me turn the volume up a little bit here. There's lots to talk about with this build, lots of exciting things, and I want to make sure that I kind of showcased it for you guys in a key that was you know, a respectable size at this point, because definitely in this expansion there's people who are doing, you know, plus 20 keys already, but I just don't have the capability of doing that right now. I don't have a solid Mythic Plus group that I can run with all the time to help me do really higher, you know, much higher keys. I'm just not able to play all the time in that capacity. I have raid nights twice a week. I have a regular job that I'm doing, of course. I've got other priorities in my life, and when I do get a chance to play these Mythic Pluses, it depends. Sometimes I can have a different group every single time I do it. So I would love to have a more solid, set-in-stone team that I could do this with, but the reality is that life just is kind of getting in the way all the time. So what I want to say, the reason I want to say that is because I think a lot of you guys are probably in a similar situation where you want to push these keys. You see people doing plus 21s and plus 22s and 25s already in Mythic Plus, and you're like, man, I wish I could do that. I want to be able to do that. And it's like, that just might not be achievable for you right now, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's okay to be doing only plus 8s and plus 10s right now. If you don't have all the time in the world, don't stress about it. And I think that, for me, I was honestly coming to terms with it myself, just being like, I want to be this big pusher that everybody talks about, and it's like, that's just not always, that's just not going to be true all the time. It's okay to not have that be the case. You know, we're still doing lots of damage. You can see right here, we're doing over 100k on this pack that's only got 4 enemies. That's what this build can help you produce. So this build actually does lots and lots of damage. But I know there'll be people in the comments of this video who are going to say this build is inferior to, you know, a Void Eruption build with Idol of Cthulhu and Screams of the Void and Dark Evangelism. Like, you should be taking all these talents. If you're not taking them, you're wrong. And it's just like, that's just not true. You can do keys at a decent level with a build like this, and it will work for you. So yeah, I just want to encourage you guys to not be discouraged about how well you're doing in Mythic Plus right now, or whatever, Raid. Like, you don't have to beat this game in the first 3 weeks of it being out. You know, it's just like, you don't have, if you're not doing plus 20 keys right now, it doesn't mean you're bad at the game. It doesn't mean that Shadowpriest sucks. It doesn't mean that any class sucks if you're not performing at the absolute top maximum level right now. If you're having fun and you're playing the game at the level that you want to get to, then that's all that matters. And I promise you that you can do decently high keys with any builds like this, even like this Deathspeaker one. Like, I could push this to a plus 17, plus 18. I could. And we did a 16 after this key, and we did it just fine. So it's more about like team coordination, and it's more about having that consistency within your group. But that takes time and practice, and if you don't have that kind of time and practice, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to freak out about it. But just remember that you need to have fun when you're playing this game, man. I think sometimes some people forget that. It's like, just have a blast. Get into a key and blast a key. Sometimes doing like plus 10s and plus 12s, I mean, not even 12, like a plus 10, just blasting a plus 10 is really fun right now. That's like way more fun than like stressing out and sweating over a plus 16, which is fun in a different way. But do you know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes it's nice to just chill out a little bit and not have that kind of stress put on you. So that being said, let me just talk about some of the important moments in this dungeon and go over why we were successful. One of the big things that I try to do a lot when I'm doing these dungeons is to communicate as much as possible. And that is when you're talking about really important abilities that are going to be thrown off. Like, I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the Let's Fly part of the dungeon. But let me get to the first boss here. We're going to kill this last pack here. I think I have my cooldowns really. Watch the damage here. Everybody's pumping damage. Like, it's really good. Bean goes crazy here. But we're getting up there. 112k, 116. Not bad at all. Lots of damage. Everybody's doing lots of damage. And then we get to the boss here. This boss fight is the most difficult part of this dungeon. And we chose to come and do him first. So we flew directly to this Raging Tempest boss first. And because we had drums and, you know, we're going to have our cooldowns up here in a second. But this boss fight is very hard. And there's a couple important things that you need to do here. So, number one, the seasonal affix. You're going to have to manage the seasonal affix and be very, very careful, because there'll be moments like this where you want to go clear your buff and you can't. You're forced to be separated, okay? So you have to be very careful about that stuff and try to clear your buffs. Sometimes you might have to clear your buff a little bit earlier than you might want to, because the reality is you're going to be stuck not being able to clear afterwards, and you don't want that to happen. So just remember that. The second important part of this is you have to collect these balls, and these balls are actually quite important. They end up giving you a buff, but they end up making you take more damage as well. So I'm dispersing right now. I actually dispersed for multiple of these electrical storms. So right before the electrical storm comes out, the boss will throw those balls out, and you can collect those balls. And again, as I said, they give you a big damage and healing buff. So there's a balancing act in this fight. You need to collect these balls in order to give yourself the damage buff so that you can kill the boss in time before everybody like dies. But you need to be careful how many balls you've collected, because once he starts doing his channeling thing, you take more damage as well. So it's a really interesting fight that way. It's crafted very, very well. You can see we're all collecting buffs here. I've got about 5 right now. Bean's got 8. Sarah's got 4. So yeah, you need to collect these so you can do extra damage, but at the cost of taking damage. So it's very, very key. These circles right here will eliminate any extra balls that you don't want to have to collect. So you can see over here, there's balls that are floating in. They're going to disappear and turn into the blue stuff blue swirlies with those. But again, there's too many balls. You don't want a ball to get to the boss. That is an absolute no. You cannot let any of the balls reach the boss, or he gets a buff that makes him just absolutely nuke you. So right here, the electrical storm is going off, and you can see we're going to start to take a lot of damage. Bean's taking a ton of damage because he has 10 stacks. But this is how it goes. This is the part where the healer just has to do crazy amounts of healing. You can see Asterial's pumping 52k right now. This is exactly how that has to work. So your healer is kind of chilling until that phase right there, and then they have to pump healing. And if you have a defensive you can pop right there, pop your defensives during that storm. That's exactly when you need to do it. If you don't do it that way, you're going to die. Here comes the next one. Let me show you this last one here. So he does Lightning Strike, and then he's going to do the final storm right here. Electrical Storm right here. So I'm basically saying, okay, I'm going to pop Fade. As a Shadow Priest, you can pop Fade. That gives you damage reduction from the class tree. If you don't know, you get 10% damage reduction because of a translucent image. So make sure you do that. Then I start to take a lot of damage because I have 10 stacks of my debuff. You can see it right here. So I'm like, I'm going to disperse here. I disperse right now. I'm just communicating while I'm doing it. And this is really huge. If you want to do these kinds of keys, like this high of a level, you've got to be able to communicate with your team, and you got to tell them, listen, I'm going to pop my defensive. Maybe that tells the healer, hey, I don't need to focus my healing on them quite so much because they have 75% DR right now. So just important, those little moments. Like, make sure you pop your defensive. Make sure that you're communicating with your team. Very important. Then we kill the boss, and that's a huge, huge deal.
That was awful.
It's a really hard fight for the healer. Yeah, that is a really hard fight for the healer, for sure. That's where, like, the healer is going to be seriously tested in your dungeon, and you're going to have to find out kind of what they're made of. So, Asterial did a great job there, pumping heals on that boss there. Now, in this little Nokhud zone, I guess it's the entire thing is a Nokhud zone, but in this part with all of the riders, there's some important abilities that end up coming out. So, the Disruptive Shout needs to be kicked right here. Very important that gets kicked. Asterial's getting attacked by a bird right now. He's getting absolutely wrecked by this bird. This bird needs to be a priority target that dies in every one of these packs. Otherwise, it'll focus somebody out. It doesn't have an aggro table. It will fixate on somebody and just kill them. Look at Asterial getting murdered. Every time he gets pecked, he loses like half of his health. He almost dies right here. I give him a shield.
The bird was chewing your face off. Yep.
He was like, I don't know what was happening.
I just thought it was like some arrow guy shooting you with arrows. I was like, oh, you should probably move. And then I was like, oh, it's just a bird pecking your eyes out.
So just remember, there's some of the packs in there have a bird that will like fixate in somebody, and some of the packs have these longbowmen that will shoot arrows at your feet. You watch my character in a second have arrows over their head, and then we have storming, and then we also have thundering. Kind of, here's the arrows up under my feet. Those little brown swirlies, those are her shooting arrows into the air, and it always targets ranged people. So I just like to come in for storming. Here comes the arrows once again. You have to keep moving constantly as a ranged player in this pack. It's really frustrating. It's something you're going to have to work on. Get good at moving while doing damage as a ranged caster. It's very difficult sometimes, and it can be a very frustrating experience, but once you practice and get good at it, it's going to make your DPS way, way higher in these kinds of moments, because if you're moving and not doing a lot of damage, you're going to just really hold your team back, and you won't be able to get the key time, which is obviously the goal there. So, again, another War Stomp guy here, and then there's also an arrow lady here, I think, who's going to start firing arrows. There's Disruptive Shout. There's the arrows coming down, the brown swirlies. Luckily, I didn't get targeted this time. And there's a bird pecking Asterial again, getting absolutely wrecked. So that's how these packs work. Focus the bird right here. You can see the War Ohuna right there. We end up focusing it down. And, oh, my spirit's going up there. We end up focusing the bird down, which is really good. Joe grips the bird twice. Did you see that? That was actually really huge. So the bird comes out to go get Asterial here. Or actually, no. That was the war guy. My bad. The bird's going to come out here in a second. He's going after Asterial right now, but Joe is stopping him and slowing him and gripping him. So that was really, really good by our tank. He basically solved that entire problem for Asterial there. So again, really good stuff. I decided to tank one of the brown arrows there because I had a proc on my Mind Seer. And I got another proc right there. I realized it wasn't going to kill me, so I just stood there and tanked the damage. You don't really want to do this, but if you have a proc from Mind Devourer, it's kind of bad to stop channeling that. So just keep that in mind. Here's the last pack here. What you're doing here is you're obviously freeing up all the ballistas for this fight right here. This fight gets really interesting. You have to make sure you press the ballista at the right time, and I messed this up. So obviously there's the Nokhud Saboteur that you need to stun and kill when he runs through. Use all your CC here. Now, the boss, I realize that the ballista's behind me. The boss will start channeling Eruption right here. You need to go press this ballista before he finishes channeling Eruption, and I didn't realize that there was actually a cast time on these ballistas. So I did it late, and we end up taking a ton of damage. Bean almost dies. So you don't do that. Don't make the mistake I just made. Here's the next ad. I'm going to show you the next ballista. This time I get it right. So right as he starts channeling Eruption, I press on the ballista, and that's more than enough time to get the lance off. There we go. Boom. We stop him, and we stop the damage from coming through. So this fight is very, very simple if you do it correctly. But yeah, it's mostly about just managing the ad when he runs through here, slowing him down, stunning him, and cleaving off of him to make sure he dies, and then make sure you're doing the ballista at the right time. Asterio's got the next ballista here. There you go. That's this entire fight. It's not very hard. It's kind of like a min-max thing. If you do it wrong, you die. If you do it right, it's very easy. So that's kind of how that fight works. Okay, then we fly off to the next area. This is the second last zone. This is our last zone for trash. Okay, well, let me go back and just look at the map there. Let me just show you this really quick. Forget who was talking. Okay, so here's the map. So instead of going like over to here and then over to here and then over here and then to the end, we went straight for this surge boss right away. Then we went back to the first boss. Now we're going over here, and then we're going to end at the end. So just, you know, if you're wondering how we kind of did this dungeon, that's how we did it. In this section, there's a lot of little things going on. You need to find your soul. That's one thing you'll have to do. Look at the damage we're pumping out at the beginning here. 120k, love it. 130k, 140k. Absolutely pumping right now. Love it. I love this build on Shadowpriest. So there's my soul. You can see it's a big white swirly that will end up on the ground. You need to go find that and pick it up, or else you're going to do less damage. You don't want to do that. Okay? Then just keep pumping damage. You're going to clear out all the packs that are here. The other thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to have green swirlies that follow you around, especially if you're a ranged player. I think it might only follow ranged players, actually. Let me just check that right here. Once we get to... It's the next pack, actually. Here we go. This pack here. So, this is really annoying. These green, like, circles get put on you. I think it's Chant of the Dead that's happening. Or, no, Necrotic Eruption. It's Necrotic Eruption. So, you have to just keep moving as a ranged player. You just have to keep moving. Again, another mechanic that forces you to move. But what you need to learn how to do is to greed your casts till the very last second. So, you can see here, I'm standing on the orb to the last second, and then it erupts. Then I'm standing on this one until the last second. I'm standing on this one until the last second, and then I move. You will avoid... You can do it where you basically can cast one spell in between each of the little orbs going off, and you have to do that as a ranged character, or you won't get any damage out when these kinds of encounters come off. So this is meant to test your ability as a ranged player. Don't be mad at the game and be like, oh, this sucks. Like, here's an example of one coming out. I'm going to finish my cast of Mind Seer right here. There's a green thing under my feet, but it's okay. I've got time. I finish my cast, then I move, then it explodes. So just always remember you've probably got more time than you think you do, and you don't need to like freak out about it and get mad. Just stay calm, finish your cast, and then move really to the side. Things like Power Word Shield help a lot with this, with Body and Soul, which gives you that 40% movement speed. Really, really a big deal. Here's Teera and Maruuk. This fight is really, really good. It's got that 2-target cleave thing going on, which is pretty good for us because we get our dots, and Shadow Crash gets extra value. Our Psychic Link gets more damage. Our Shadow Word Death gets more damage because my build cleaves, right? Our Pain of Death will cleave, and our Psychic Link is cleaving. Shadow Crash is doing more damage, etc., etc. Everything cleaves. So this is really, really good for our build. This is one of the most dangerous abilities in this fight, the Gale Arrow. She sends out arrows on everybody, and then it sends out tornadoes from your location. So you need to be very careful about where you're positioning. You need to pre-spread for that Gale Arrow going out, or else you're going to end up dying, as I think Bean does a little bit later. I don't know what was happening there. This is another, he does Earth Splitter, sorry. You cannot stand in these brown swirlies or you will die. You also cannot stand in the brown earthquake that he leaves behind or you will die in about 1.5 seconds. It's very fast. Just don't get touched by that ability or you're going to die. So here's the part where I think Bean gets wrecked here because he's just a little bit too close. She's going to do her Gale Arrow. Right here, it comes out. Gale Arrow is slapping the ground right now, and I think that Bean's over here and ends up getting hit by another tornado. I think he said he rolled into another tornado by accident, so really unfortunate for him there. But that's just, you know, just a mechanic that you got to watch out for. But that's most of the fight. Repel is a thing you need to kick here. She's going to push you back with Guardian Wind. You need to kick this with Silence or whatever kick you've got. Okay? And that's the rest of the fight. It's actually pretty good. There's not a lot of damage except for Gale Arrow. Just watch out for Gale Arrow. That's most of the damage there. Now, once this fight is over, you're gonna fly. Let me see if I get the map out here. So you're gonna fly a straight line from Teera up to the final boss, and you're gonna stop in the mountains right up here. That's where you're stopping. Okay. So you can see we fly straight here, straight across. You're going to skip the rest of the trash in the dungeon. Like I said, that's the last section where you get trash from. And you're going to fly all the way over here, and then it will zap you from the sky, and you'll get dropped off your mount. But you've made it. This is the final little section before the last boss. You can kind of sneak your way into the final boss arena. Don't do what I just did right there. I almost pulled. You can sneak your way into the final boss arena, and you can kill these last two guards here, and you can skip all of the horrible trash that's in this last area. You don't really want to fight the trash that's in this last area. That's just, honestly, you don't want to do that. It's really awful. So, let's get to the final boss fight here. I'll talk about this boss fight in a second, but I just want to talk about the Shadowpriest build first of all. You know, this is the no idle build, guys, and I really do enjoy it. I'm going to keep pumping it in Mythic Plus, and I'm going to keep trying it. Is this going to work in a plus 21 key or a plus 20 key or something? Probably not right now. Probably not if I'm realistic. But is it my favorite way to play Shadowpriest right now? And does it do the content that I'm doing right now, which I think is perfectly acceptable? Like, doing plus 15s and plus 16s right now is good. My rating is still really good right now. So it's not the best. I don't think this build scales as well as the other builds, but it's still fun to play. It's still something that you can take into a plus 15 key, plus 16 key, plus 17. It will do enough damage for you. You can see we're doing almost 60k overall in this dungeon by the end of it. Like, it'll do the job that you need it to do. It will. And it's so much more fun to play, in my opinion, than the channeling builds. Also, I do think it has more mobility and more flexibility than the channeling builds, which is a really big deal in my opinion. So, I just want to say that about this build. Number 2, this boss fight is basically pretty boring until he gets to phase 2, which he's doing right now. Luckily, we had Joe to grip all the enemies in here, but if you don't have a Death Knight, you need to silence or kick all of these adds that are on the outside. They'll try and cast Stormbolt, and it will wreck you. So you need to grip them all in, or silence them so that they walk into the tank, and then you need to AoE kick them, AoE stun them. A druid, like a balanced druid beam, would be insane right here. That would be really good to have a boomy in your key. That kind of idea, okay? And then just pump as much damage as you can, okay? And then once they're dead, you don't have to deal with the adds ever again. But the boss gets empowered. So now you have these lightning things that will follow you around because this dungeon doesn't have enough abilities that follow around ranged characters, apparently. He's going to do Thunder Strike, and then he's going to do this thing, right? This is this circle right here. This might be Thunder Strike, actually. What does he do here? He puts a blue circle on somebody, and then he's going to throw his spear at them and charge. Here comes Static Spear. So he throws it, and it's going to pull everybody to the spear, and then you need to get away from the boss because he's going to trample you. Run, 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 run. Iron Stampede, he tramples you. And that's the rest of the fight, honestly. It's just lightning bolts that follow you around, and it's him running around. There's some wind stuff that gets put on the ground, but realistically, it's mostly about this moment right here where he stampedes you and tries to run you over. You just have to get out of dodge and don't get run over. That's all it is. So very, very simple there. And then just keep beating up the boss. So that's a plus 15 Nokhud offensive, guys. Did it on a Shadowpriest. Did it with the Deathspeaker build. So I promise you, if you're wondering about the Deathspeaker build, if you wanted to try it and you're like, I can't try it because all the websites are telling me that it's trash, just know it's not actually that bad. If you learn how to play this and you learn how to play it well, you can do almost, 60k in this Nokhud offensive. I think I did an Algothar Academy and did about 75k overall, which is perfectly fine. I know some people are doing like 100k overall. Well, good for them. But you can do this build, excuse me, you can do this build in these keys, a plus 15, a plus 16. You can do that and be successful. I promise you, you're going to have a lot of fun doing it as well. So thank you so much again for watching, guys. I love you all. Let me know what you think in those comments down below, and I will see you in the next one.